Smash that like button right now and welcome back to the channel Vikings Nation, because today we are doing exactly what draft season was built for: sitting down, stacking names, and building the most exciting mock draft for the Minnesota Vikings that makes the defensive coordinator in your brain do a happy little dance. We have 5 picks to walk through, we have Dane Brugler's Beast Guide intelligence backing up every single selection, and we have a philosophy that runs through this entire exercise like a through line: lean into your strength, feed the beast, and then do not forget that Kyler Murray still needs some things around him to truly thrive. Pick 18, pick 49, pick 82, pick 97, and pick 163. 5 selections. 5 chances to improve this roster. And by the time we are done today, I genuinely believe you are going to be walking away thinking this is how you build a championship contender in the modern NFL. Subscribe right now if you have not already, drop that like, and let's get into every single pick starting with the most important one. Pick number 18. This is the pick that has had more discourse around it, more mock draft entries, more fan debates than perhaps any single selection for the Vikings in recent memory. For weeks, Dylan Thieneman from Oregon has been the name connected to Minnesota so relentlessly that it started to become almost a joke in certain corners of the internet. And then something interesting happened. Scouts and analysts started looking more carefully at the safety who actually comes from a smaller program and asking whether he might be the better fit for what Brian Flores runs. The pick here is Emmanuel McNeill-Warren, safety out of Toledo. And before the doubters in the chat start typing, let me make the case because it is genuinely compelling. McNeill-Warren is 6'3" and 201 pounds, which means he carries the kind of frame that was essentially built for the way NFL defenses now use their safeties: big, physical, able to come down into the box and handle tight ends and slot receivers without getting physically overpowered, while also having the range to patrol deep zones and close on ball carriers from distance. The closing speed is the first thing that stands out when you watch his tape at Toledo, and it is the first thing everyone who has evaluated him comments on. Dane Brugler described him in his Beast Guide as an impressive size athlete on the back end who is at his best when roaming to read his keys, floating the ball, and quickly closing space, with the rangy tools to push for starting safety reps as an NFL rookie. That last phrase, push for starting safety reps as an NFL rookie, is not a phrase Brugler drops casually. That is a first-round grade indicator from the most respected draft guide in the business. The stat that makes your jaw drop is this: among all FBS safeties with at least 200 coverage snaps in 2025, McNeill-Warren earned a Pro Football Focus coverage grade of 92.0, which was the highest in the entire country. He was targeted just 15 times all season, allowing only 6 receptions. 6. Opposing quarterbacks looked at him, decided they did not want to test him, and pointed the football somewhere else. That is not a small school safety getting exposed by inferior competition. That is a player whose presence alone was changing the decision-making of college quarterbacks game by game. He forced 9 fumbles over his college career, 11 tackles for loss, 5 career interceptions, 214 career tackles across 48 games. This is a player who has been producing at a high level and creating chaos around the ball for 4 full seasons. The comparison that keeps coming up in evaluations is Harrison Smith, and it is not a coincidence that it is the exact comparison the fan base needs to hear right now. Smith's retirement, or at minimum his greatly diminished future role at age 37, leaves a void at the safety position that is not just about the physical production. It is about the mental presence. Smith was always the player who lined up the entire defense, who processed pre-snap information at a level that made the whole secondary work more efficiently, who could be trusted in any alignment Brian Flores drew up on a whiteboard because his football IQ gave him the flexibility to execute from any spot. McNeill-Warren is not Harrison Smith yet, but of the safeties available in this class, his combination of size, closing speed, physicality, and demonstrated instincts in coverage and run support is the profile that comes closest to what Smith has provided for over a decade. At the Combine, his 40 time of 4.52 was not eye-popping on paper. But the coaches and scouts who have watched his tape consistently note that on film, his closing speed reads faster than that number suggests, because his ability to read the play before it develops gives him a head start that pure speed cannot replicate. He is not a guy who reacts. He is a guy who anticipates, and in Brian Flores's defense, that cognitive advantage translates directly to being in the right place before the ball is even snapped. The level of competition at Toledo will draw the expected questions. But Quinyon Mitchell came through the exact same program, dealt with the exact same questions about MAC competition, and immediately became one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL as a rookie. Toledo is producing NFL talent at an extraordinary rate right now, and McNeil Warren is the next in that pipeline. Taking him at 18 would give Brian Flores exactly the kind of versatile, physical, high-motor safety he needs to anchor the back end of one of the better defenses in the league. Now let's move to pick 49, and this is where the mock draft makes the statement that Brian Flores's Christmas morning officially begins. Lee Hunter, defensive tackle out of Texas Tech, comes off the board at 49, and if you are someone who believes that championships are ultimately won in the trenches, this pick will make your soul feel warm. Hunter is 6'3" and 325 pounds of exactly what the Vikings defensive line needs. A true nose tackle who anchors the interior, demands double-team attention, controls gaps, frees up edge rushers, and loves the dirty work that most players in this class would rather not have anything to do with. Dane Brugler described Hunter in the Beast Guide as an instinctive run defender with heavy hands who projects as a scheme-diverse two-gapping nose tackle. Every part of that write-up matters. Two-gapping means he can anchor one spot and control two potential running lanes simultaneously, which is the most demanding assignment you can give an interior defender. Scheme-diverse means he can align in multiple spots along the line depending on what Flores wants to run on a given down, which gives coordinators flexibility they do not always get from a traditional nose tackle. And heavy hands means offensive linemen are going to feel him from the moment the ball is snapped, which means they are going to commit extra attention to account for him, which means Brian Flores's edge rushers are getting one-on-one opportunities they would not have otherwise. At Texas Tech in 2025, Hunter anchored the nation's top-ranked rushing defense. The Red Raiders gave up 68.5 rushing yards per game, the best number in the country, and Hunter was the interior foundation that made that unit function the way it did. He recorded 8.5 tackles for loss and 2.5 sacks on his way to All-America honors and a Senior Bowl invitation. The Senior Bowl is one of the more important evaluation settings the draft process offers because it puts prospects against other top talents in a controlled environment with NFL coaching staffs on the sideline, and Hunter was one of the most talked about players that entire week. When NFL scouts are buzzing about a defensive tackle during Senior Bowl practice, you pay attention. The argument for Hunter next to Jalen Redmond is the argument for one of the most potentially disruptive defensive tackle pairings in the NFC North. Redmond has already established himself as arguably the best player on this Vikings defense. Multiple analysts and coaches across the league have described him as a consistent disruptor against both the run and the pass. But even the best interior defender benefits from having a quality nose tackle next to him who commands attention and prevents offensive lines from loading resources onto one side. Add Hunter to Redmond and you have a young, hungry defensive tackle rotation that opposing offensive coordinators are going to spend significant time scheming around. Walk away from the first two rounds with McNeil Warren and Hunter and you have essentially handed Brian Flores two new toys that fit his system precisely, both capable of contributing immediately, and both players who make the Vikings defense better in ways that show up on the scoreboard rather than just in highlight reels. Pick 82 takes the conversation to the offensive side of the ball, because as much fun as it is to build a dominant defense, Kyler Murray still needs protection, and the offensive line still has a question mark at the center position that needs to be addressed. Sam Heck, center out of Kansas State, is the pick here. And while center might not be the kind of selection that gets the blood pumping the way a safety or a pass rusher does, the importance of this particular position for a team building an offensive line around a mobile quarterback cannot be overstated. Here is what you need to know about Sam Heck: 0 sacks allowed, 0 penalties, and approximately 800 offensive snaps in his final college season. 0 sacks.